spend an entire episode of Comics in History talking about Linda Park's incalculable importance to Wally West, both as a hero and as a human being. She would become a vital, completely indispensable member of the Flash's supporting cast during Mark Waid's time as the writer, and she was right there with Wally straight through until the end of the pre-Flashpoint era. And it's nice to see a bit more of maturity on Wally's part here, as in the end he finds the way to tell Linda how he feels about her, and we get a sense that he's going to start leaving Power Girl alone in the Justice League Europe, something which no doubt made a lot of JLE fans happy because, wow, in a number of issues, Wally would do things that came off as really pig-headed towards Power Girl. The other reason why the story is so important is because it sets up the later explanation for Barry's return. Then we move right into Flash number 73. And this is a Christmas-themed story. And I imagine that this issue was released in December of 1992, even though it's got a 1993 cover date on it. Just to let you all know, pulling back the curtain a bit, I will be reviewing this entire issue for the Comics in History Christmas special this December because it has a wonderful story. It speaks to the kindness and heroism of the Flash from any era. I should mention here that in addition to Linda Park, Jay Garrick also became a really wonderful member of Flash's supporting cast. Of course, it was the Armageddon 2001 spin-off four-parter Inferno, which resulted in the JSA being released from limbo. And while there were early attempts to start up a Justice Society of America title, those plans were scuttled in the end. And so Mark Waid was able to take Jay and make him a supporting cast member. And so fans would get to see these really great team-up stories between Wally and Jay. And this is one of those stories. Now, art-wise, this issue shows us that Mr. LaRock wasn't just a great Wally West as Flash artist. He was a great Flash artist, period. In this issue, and subsequent issues, he draws Jay Garrick skillfully. He gives Jay his own build, his own distinct facial features. It's also interesting to note that in this issue, Jay refers to Wally as Junior, and he continues to do so through the majority of the return of Barry Allen storyline. I do need to take some time here, though, to talk about the epilogue to Flash number 73. In the epilogue, we see Wally and Jay back at Wally's house with Jay's wife, Joan, and we also see Linda. It's been a busy Christmas Eve day of superheroing and cooking, so everyone, well, aside from Wally, is looking at turning in for the night. But then the doorbell rings, and Joan asks Wally jokingly if he is expecting the man in red. When Wally opens the door, he and everyone else are astounded to see Barry Allen in his costume at the doorstep. And this leads into part 1 of the return of Barry Allen in Flash number 74. So part 1 opens with Barry explaining the circumstances of his return to Jay and Hal Jordan. While he's doing this, Wally reflects on his memory of seeing his uncle's empty Flash costume and a raving psycho pirate at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths. And he also recalls taking up the title of the Flash to honor his mentor's legacy. Barry explains that his final memories prior to his death are hazy. He recalls being transformed into a disembodied mass of energy, and he stayed in this non-corporeal form until Wally's recent battle with Dr. Alchemy, which resulted in Barry taking human form again. Barry goes on to say that he drifted through the streets of Central and Keystone cities until he came upon the Flash Museum, which triggered his memory of who he was. Now, the explanation makes complete sense to Jay and Hal. Hal says that not only does he believe that this man is telling the truth, but a ring scan confirms that the man is Barry Allen. However, Wally is skeptical, as there is one thing that Barry has failed to mention. Now, Wally has not yet told Barry that he has taken the title of the Flash, so as not to shock his recently returned mentor. Jay and Hal, for their part, feel that this makes good sense since Barry has already suffered through enough trauma. Everyone goes outside to say bye to Hal, who has to go back to his duties as GL, and they see the Pied Piper approaching. Barry immediately suits up and he starts pounding on Piper, forcing Wally to jump in and tell Barry that Piper has reformed. And I've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again here. One of the really beautiful elements of Wally's time as the Flash is that he became one of those heroes who didn't just go out to take his opponents to jail. Where possible, he would actually talk with his opponents and see if there's anything which he could do to help them. And while there wasn't much he could do against certain ones like Captain Cold or Weather Wizard, he was able to get through to the Pied Piper and to the Trickster, and they reformed themselves, and in Piper's case, he even became a good friend and ally of Wally's. Now, in a way, it does make sense for Barry to jump into action like this. Barry was a police scientist, but a police officer in general, and he was someone who always saw things in terms of black and white. So Barry could come across as one of those people who could not see one of his rogues reforming. And one could say that with his memories still being somewhat wonky, but coming back, that of course his natural instinct is going to be to jump into action and take down the Piper. But for long-time Flash readers, it might make them think, Barry's being a little over the edge here in terms of his physical actions. And so older readers might think back to an old nemesis of Barry's who had no use for the other rogues. I'm talking about the Reverse Flash. He was, of course, the 25th century criminal who came back in time to fight with Barry a number of times. He was the one who killed Iris, attempted to kill Barry's second fiancée, Fiona Webb, which resulted in Barry snapping Reverse Flash's neck and going on trial for manslaughter/murder. It was very clear in the final issue of Barry's title, issue number 350, that the Rogues also had a great sense of dislike and contempt for Reverse Flash when another time-traveling villain, Abracadabra, disguised himself as Reverse Flash and posed as Reverse Flash to the other Rogues. just might make readers think, is this really Barry? So Barry stands down. He listens to Wally, but he also expresses his concern that Piper addressed Wally by his name and that Wally has made his identity public. Piper explains that he has come with information about a new crime boss coming into town to snuff out a rival, which will lead to a gang war. While he races inside, he suits up, and Barry sees his nephew wearing his redesigned costume. Wally realizes that his attempt to break the news gently to Barry is now moot, but thankfully Barry smiles and says, "Nice suit." And there's this one panel which has been used at a ton of places on the internet, just showing the two Flashes standing close to each other. And I've got to give full credit to Mr. LaRock for his visual interpretation of the two Flashes. Barry looks so much like Carmine Infantino's Barry. He's not as tall as Wally, but while Wally is in general leaner, Barry has a broader chest, face as well. Even though they're two similar yet different looking costumes, you can still tell that it's two very different men inside each of the costumes. Now, Barry's pose is somewhat ominous. Okay, one could look at him bending his head slightly downward and say that this is him recognizing his nephew as somebody who's a grown man now, and that he's feeling pride at seeing Wally as the Flash. But there's also a bit of a leer towards Barry and somewhat of a hunch, a slouch in his posture. It looks more like a pose that would be made by a villain with the head not fully held high. And I think this provides an early clue that this man is not who he claims to be. Now Barry joins Wally and Piper in confronting the crime boss and his rival at the carnival. Barry expresses concern over the fact that Wally's cowl has lenses that cover his eyes and thus makes it harder for people to trust him, but he understands that Wally is his own man and needs to do things his own way. It's interesting, the comment that Barry makes, because Wally didn't install the lenses for sake of covering up his identity. Of course, he made his identity public because he wanted people to know that he was a human being and he was a fellow citizen of Keystone City. If anything, the lenses were there to help protect Wally when he was running at high speeds and different projectiles were coming his way. But Wally also notes that Barry's words are very much like words that Barry would have used years ago. Just look at the time here, folks. I'm going to wrap up this first part here. So when I come back with part 2 next week, I'll wrap up this look at the first issue in the Return of Barry Allen storyline, and then I will move forward from there. So until another 7 days have come and gone, this class is dismissed.